I Don't Know Yet is not affiliated with any specific 12-step fellowship. The content put forth are the thoughts, opinions, and experiences of the host and guests. It is meant to be suggestive only and is in no way a reflection on how to work the steps in any fellowship or how to work any other recovery program. Hey, girl.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Awesome.
I'm really happy to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. This is an exciting opportunity for me.
I know. I'm so excited.
Mm-hmm.
So, Krista, what are we talking about today?
So today we're talking about relationships, more specific, I think, to relationships in recovery and early recovery and, what the suggestions are on that and what my experience on that has been.
Perfect. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you.
Thanks.
I think a good jumping off point would be kind of going off of what we hear the most in the rooms,
Right.
which is why it's so important to wait a year.
Wait a year, or, I've also heard don't make any big decisions, like big life decisions in early recovery up to and including getting into a personal relationship with a partner. So, I thought I was one of the lucky ones. I thought I was going to get away without heeding that warning, and that I was going to be able to have this wonderful, perfect, committed relationship in early recovery. So, do you want me to tell my story about it? Or?
I would love to hear it.
Okay, so I sobered up. I sobered up just over 10 years ago. I was in a really bad place. I was drinking a lot, and I was using drugs, and I was really lonely. I had lost, I had a partner for 4 years before that, and we broke up. I ended up moving back in with my mom, so I was living with my mom for a while, and I realized at that point that, what I was doing wasn't working, and I knew that I needed to make some changes, but I didn't know how. So during that time, my loneliness, which I didn't understand at the time, led me to a place where I really thought and believed that if I got into a relationship with a great guy, that I'd be able to turn my life around and that everything would go well. And, I would finally have what I needed to be the person that I knew deep down I could be.
Right. And what a common thing for a lot of us to think that way, right?
We're filling the void with what we know best, right? We don't have the education or knowledge to know, the spiritual malady and what that actually looks like. So it feels like loneliness. That's how I felt it, and that was my experience. So I remember being just super duper lonely. So what did I do? And this is 10 years ago. I went on online dating, which was fairly new at the time, to be honest. Not to date myself, but yeah, I decided to do online dating, and I started having conversations with a guy. He was really nice. We got along really great. One of the first things that he said to me was, just so you know, I am in recovery, and I take my recovery very seriously. It will always be number one. I'd like to meet you, but I want you to know before we meet that recovery to me is always number one, and that's the way it's going to be. And of course, my first thought was, oh my gosh, this is never going to work out. Right? Because I was like, I can't quit drinking and I can't quit using, and I have a problem with it.
But did he ever set the expectation that you couldn't?
No.
Okay. Just that it was really important to him.
He didn't know anything about, he didn't know me. We hadn't even met yet at this point. We were just talking. We were texting. Right. So he hadn't met me. He just wanted to set the expectation about himself. And I was like, I better not talk to this guy. He's way too good for me. I can't be sober. So with that, he really wanted to entertain this idea of us meeting up. So we ended up meeting up. And at the time I'm just going to get into the funny details of the story because it is really funny.
I love funny details.
So he came over. I'd had a few drinks for, the liquid courage or whatever.
Yep.
I'm sure he could smell, or he knew that I had been drinking. He didn't say anything about it. Then we decided to meet up again, and the next time we met up, he got in my car, and I had one of these breathalyzer devices in my vehicle. Yep. So you had to blow in it, right, to go anywhere. And he was like, oh, what's that about? And I was like, oh, I got pulled over. I had a DUI. It's not a big deal.
Everything's fine.
It's fine. I just had a couple drinks. It's not a thing or anything like that, because I knew right away that he was in sobriety. So I wanted to make sure that I was trying to live up to his, these expectations that I created in my head that I thought that he would have of me. Anyways, I would say it was probably 3 months into us seeing each other, I realized that I had a big problem. I was trying as hard as I could to avoid drinking and using, and trying to stay sober to be around this guy because I really liked him. Like, I decided that I really liked him and I wanted to be with him. And I got to a place where I was actually, feeling like I just needed to end it. I didn't want to live anymore.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't play it. I couldn't be that fake person. I wanted to be sober, but I couldn't be sober and I didn't know how. And I couldn't pretend to be somebody for this person. And I had said something to him, and he, at that moment, said, "You know what? I'm coming to get you. I'm going to throw you on your bike, and we're going to figure this out." So he put me on his bike, and we went and took in a meeting together. And that was the start of our relationship and my relationship with recovery. So from there, yeah, we dated. We dated, and we were in recovery, and everything was really great. We were living on the pink cloud. I'd finally met somebody who really cared about me, and somebody who wasn't interested in drugs and alcohol, which is pretty much what all of my previous relationships had been based around. Dating other people who were involved in that side of life led me to relationships that were abusive and harmful. And, I wasn't taken care of, and I wasn't cared for. I didn't care about myself, and I didn't take care of myself. And this was something really new to me, and it was something really beautiful. Like, I fell in love really quickly, like they say all addicts do. I can only speak for myself, but I fell in love really quickly. And a year after dating, and on my 1 year sobriety birthday, I got engaged. We got engaged.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we got engaged.
Okay.
So we were a year in and we got engaged, and I was so excited. He had said, "Let's wait a little while. Let's just, explore this and wait a little while." But I was dead set. I was like, "We're getting married. This is it. This is the one.
Let's do this thing.
This is the man that I want to spend the rest of my life with." So 2 years in, 2 years into our relationship, we had a wedding and we got married, and it was beautiful. And it was awesome. We had a church filled with recovery friends. It was absolutely the most wonderful, gorgeous thing I could have ever imagined. And we lived a really happy life. Like, we really enjoyed. We both were very engaged in recovery. We were very engaged in our recovery circles, and we sort of kept that separate. He had his guys and I had my girls, and we helped people regularly, and we're very involved in the programs that we were associated with, and both worked good jobs. And yeah, so we went on a honeymoon that winter, and we became pregnant with our first child, my little guy Jack. I just love him to pieces. Yeah, and I guess that's when things started to change a little bit. It was after after Jack was born. The pressures of life became really real, right? Like, you become a mom, or in my ex's case, he became a father, and now you have this additional role, and you're also trying to hold together your recovery, and you're trying to hold together your job, and you're trying to, keep this life that you have envisioned all together. And
it's a lot of things to manage at once.
There's a lot of things to manage. Yeah. And you know what? I'm going to be completely honest. Like, I had no idea what being a mom was going to be like. I wasn't raised around children. I thought it was going to be really easy, to be quite honest. I was like, oh, yeah, I can do this. Like, this is what everybody does. Look at how many people have kids. It's simple, right?
Shouldn't be that hard to pick up.
It shouldn't be that hard, right?
Yeah.
It's hard. It's very, very, very hard. And it seemed like sort of shortly after that, we both started to feel pressures and stress, and had a harder time engaging not only in recovery, but also in each other. And, but you know what? But things were fine. And, there's ups and downs in relationships, and there's ups and downs in life. Like, forever's a long time. So you get through it and you try your best and you work on it. So we did. And, we got some help that we needed. We went and we got a social worker to help us with parenting and things like that. And then we decided together. I should be fair. I think it was mostly my decision, but I was like, I want another one. Like, we can't, like, I didn't want Jack to be an only child. I wanted him to have a sibling, and I also wanted to try for a girl and to have another one. I really wanted to be a mom of two. I was ready for it. So, we set off on the journey of having another baby, and we did. And Emma was born. So, so now we got Jack and Emma. And again, same thing happened. We we brought Emma home, and everything was really good for a little while. And then the stresses of having 2 children in the home took over, and oh my gosh, it was definitely it was, unfortunately, you think that these things are going to bring you together, but unfortunately for us, it was the beginning of the end, right? Like, there was no time for, recovery. There was no time for ourselves. There was no time to do anything except for go to work and take care of the kids. And, our son was still young, and Emma was brand new, and she wasn't sleeping. So there's no sleep. And, we talk about in recovery about, the HALT, the hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
Yep.
When you're a new mom or a new dad, like, you're hungry, angry, lonely, and tired all the time. All the time.
And, I think it's really important to point out too, like, I don't have children.
Right.
And managing my own life in recovery sometimes seems impossible, right? We all go through those down dips. I can't imagine what it must have been like for you.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing. And it's funny when you say that. When I hear you say managing my own life, it brings me back to a concept that I sort of wrapped my head around the other day, was that I was trying to manage my own life. And that's when stuff falls apart, right? It's like when we're trying to manage. And that's what happens when you're a parent. That's what happens when you're a parent. You forget about all the other concepts. You're like, I'm going to manage this. I've got to manage you. I've got to manage you. I've got to pack lunches. I got to, do laundry. I got to do this. And you're trying to manage your day. And what we learn in recovery is that it's not our responsibility to manage that, right? It's our responsibility to turn that over and ask for help from some sort of a divine source that we feel is fit for us.
Yeah.
So, but it's really hard to remember that when you're hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. What you want to do is just get the shit done and carry on with your life, right?
Yeah.
So that you can maybe get a wink of sleep or maybe do something. So, not to go into too much detail about my ex-husband's personal life, but at the same time, he was diagnosed with a medical condition.
Okay.
That was scary for him and scary for me, and it was also the beginning of the pandemic. So we were locked up in our homes. We were locked up in a house, 2 brand new kids, and a couple struggling in a relationship, a new medical diagnosis, and a pandemic happening outside, and very little supports and help for us, right? Like,
what a lot.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot. And, I think you don't even necessarily know how much it is when you're trying to manage it or trying to get through it.
Yep.
You think this is all normal. But now when I think back, I think, holy cow, like, that's a lot. Mm-hmm. That's a lot, right? Daycares weren't open. Parents weren't coming over because everybody was afraid of everybody. Mm-hmm. You couldn't go to a meeting. You couldn't do the things that you normally do to escape that. You're just sort of trapped in your little bubble. And I think with the stress that my ex felt with his medical condition, it really pulled him out of his ability to connect with, nurturing our relationship and nurturing the children. He had to deal with his own stuff, and I totally understand. So yeah, with that, I mean, I caution in that I don't want to get into too much detail about what happened there because it's my perspective. And I know that he was involved and I was involved, but essentially what that led to was, him a few years later slipping out of recovery, nearly 10 years into sobriety. So at that point, it was, I felt like I had taken on such a I guess more of the weight of the parenting and more of the weight of the relationship that I pulled away, and I had felt that the damage had been done, and we decided to go our separate ways. So I ended up as a single mom in recovery with 2 small kids and a full-time job, and trying to figure out how to get a mortgage on my own, and keep a roof over my kids' heads, and make sure that all the things were done, and make sure I was still showing up to work to be able to pay the bills and to do all the things, and then still investing in my recovery family, which is very important to my recovery, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've got girls and women that I work with very often, and that keeps me stable and it keeps me where I need to be. So to be able to fit all that in too became a real juggling act. I guess what I learned from that was to bring it back to sort of the topic about, getting into a relationship in early recovery is, even though it didn't work out for my ex and I, like we're currently going through a separation and a divorce, it didn't work out for us. And, you know, I can't see myself with him again. I still love him, right? I love him as a human being. I love him as the father of my children. And I love him as, you know, the man that I married. But unfortunately now we don't have that in love. We're not in that place where we can be in a relationship. And I think the reason for that is because we both grew in sobriety, right? We got into a relationship. I forgot to mention at the beginning of the show that, or maybe I didn't, he was 9 months sober and I was newly sober. So he was also new in sobriety when we met, and I was just sobering up. And, you know, we were young. We were young in sobriety. We were young in life. We were full of energy and, you know, full of excitement and, you know, living the sober dream. And we started growing up. We grew up in our programs, and we grew up as parents, and we grew in different directions. Not to say that one direction is better than the other. We just sort of changed, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, I understand now. I didn't understand at the time when people would say to me, don't get into a relationship in the first year, or don't make any big life decisions. To me, I was pretty cocky about that. I was like, well, you know, I did, and it worked for me. I remember sitting there, you know, in a room with a brand new baby and my husband sitting next to me and reading a chapter in a book that said, you know, exactly that, and laughing and laughing and being like, well, you know, maybe that's not true for everybody. But in retrospect now, when I look back, like, yeah, I get it. I get why they would say that. I get why there would be a warning in that. I think it's so important when you sober up to first learn who you are. Because I didn't know who I was. I thought I knew who I was. If I was talking to me 10 years ago, I'd be like, I know who I am, right? Like, I'm a very strong-willed individual, and I am very firm in my beliefs, and I think I know who I am. But, you know, when I look back now, even who I was at 5 years of being sober, I don't even know if that 5-year Krista would have been able to handle what I took on in early sobriety. Right. I feel like I'm just kind of coming in now to who I really am, and I'm learning myself.
Yeah. What a great story.
Oh,
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
My experience with the whole dating thing in the beginning. I've mentioned it on other shows, and I'm pretty open about it. I was court mandated to come into sobriety and to come into recovery. And so I was getting it from both sides, right? From in the rooms, I was being told this, never written down anywhere, but everybody knows about this rule a year. And so from this rehabilitation program that I was in, they were like, we really believe like 3 to 5 years. And I was like, that sounds like a way too long of a time.
That's crazy.
But they were adamant. So I started dating somebody, I think I was 6 or 7 months sober, somebody in the rooms that had 5 years. Okay. So I'm like, I'm stepping up. It's going to be great. And it was interesting because after this had happened, my program was like, yeah, you can't date while you're in this.
Right.
You need to focus on you.
Right.
So if you want to stay in this and move on, you got to stop doing that.
Yeah.
And so this person that I dated, like, I saw him in the rooms all the time. I knew how much time he had. And I was just like, okay, well, this is obviously a smart decision.
Yeah.
Right. And then we started dating, and it was really only probably 4 or 5 weeks, if I'm being really honest. But I had just gotten into a place where I was like halfway done my steps, working really hard with my sponsor, really trying to be better. And I noticed these flags like right away, but I didn't know how to identify them because I still didn't know enough.
Yeah. Like what flags? What do you mean?
Just someone who doesn't do what they say they're going to do.
Oh, okay.
Right? Somebody who doesn't show up. Somebody who's maybe not super honest.
Yeah.
There was just little things, but I've never had a long-term relationship in my entire life.
Okay.
I've been engaged before. My longest relationship in my life was 6 to 7 months.
Okay.
Because I had no idea how to date healthy. I spent so much time taking advantage of people I was dating to feed my habit and feed my addiction. Right. I'd never experienced a long or any kind of healthy relationship, right? Yeah. So I started dating this person. It didn't work out. He was not a good fit for me, but I didn't know why at the time. Then I found out this person had been coming into the rooms for 5 years and never opened the book.
Oh, yeah.
So there was no growth on his part because he wasn't participating in the things that make us healthy and better. So then I'm like, okay, I guess I'll listen to what they're saying. I'm not going to do any dating. And then I like hit that year and I was like, hey, I'm ready to do this. But I had to do this other program first. So I think I was like 15 months sober when I graduated that program. Yeah. And I like my it's crazy how an addict's brain works. Like I wasn't thinking about my future, my next steps, my growth. I was being like, great, now I can find someone to date.
That's right. Yeah.
Because that's the next step.
That's right. Yeah.
I went back. So I dated 3 people over the course of my second year in sobriety. 2 of them were exes.
Like previous exes?
Yeah.
Oh.
Looking back now, I really see that a lot of it was fear related for me. Mm-hmm. So being rejected is terrifying to me.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to go online or go out after, like, this is right when the pandemic stuff started to lift, right? Instead of going and trying to find someone new that was interested, I reached out to previous people that I had interest in, and they also showed interest back in me. So I was like, oh, this is easy.
Yeah.
Right. And so I I engaged. Oh my goodness.
I was like, oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no. I engaged with one of my exes. That was probably only like 6 or 8 weeks as well, a couple of months. Yeah. And I really think it's so important that people that are watching this really understand how little we know about ourselves. Mm-hmm. Even like I was 18 months sober at this time, mm-hmm. and I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything.
For sure.
I spent my whole first year getting sober, doing the steps. And I really feel like over the course of my time, I've learned like year 1 is about getting sober. Year 2 is about staying sober. Yeah. Year 3 and on is really learning how to live sober and applying all that stuff. Yeah. And
that's where it starts.
That's where it starts.
Yes. Like I'm at like 10 years in and I'm still questioning if I actually even know anything about myself. Like I do. Yeah. I feel very confident that I do. But when I think about how I felt about how I feel now about myself 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I question how much, maybe in 5 years from now, if I look back at me now today. Yeah. Did I know myself today? Do I?
Right.
Actually, like, do we?
It's when you really invest in this thing and give it everything you have, the amount of growth and just becoming a better, like, it's monumental. It's crazy. Yeah. So I dated this person. It didn't work out. I was butthurt about it. Digging in with my sponsor, I'm like, I never should have engaged with that person because the things that I thought were really important to me in a relationship, he didn't have those things. Right. And that's when the first time I'm like, oh, maybe I'm not actually looking for a partner. Maybe I am looking to fill some sort of void. Right. So then I started digging more into my program, and then I started to feel even better. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to date. Yeah. And then I did the same thing again with another ex that didn't work out. And then I got butthurt about it, that self-pity mode. And then I had to go through with my sponsor and then find out that I engaged with somebody who wasn't a good fit for me. Right. So finally, I'm like, okay, you know what? Maybe 3 to 5 years made sense. Yeah. And I made a deal and I sat with my higher power. I prayed on it and I said, you know what? It has become clear to me that I have a lot of work to do. Mm-hmm. And I don't this is just skimming the surface of who I really am. Right. And I think a lot of us struggle with that. We come into the rooms being, broken and suicidal and hopeless. And so many of us suffer from, you're a mom. Yeah. I'm a daughter. Yeah. I'm a friend. I'm this, I'm that. Like, who are we? Who are you without those other things? Yeah. And it's so hard to be able to do the internal work to see that stuff and really do that. But it was just interesting. So I'm like, hey, God, I'm not dating anymore. I'm like, this has shown me that I still have a lot of work to do. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm no longer, I got rid of all my online dating apps. I got rid of all that stuff. I said, I'm not dating anymore. Yep. I'm going to work on myself, work with others, and do the best to build my life. And when I'm supposed to start dating someone, you'll make it evidently clear.
Yeah. Put that person in my path, right?
Exactly.
And so has that happened?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So, because I was going to say, before we digress,
Yeah.
I was gonna say actually that for me was the same thing. So after my marriage ended, I swore to myself, I swore up and down, I swore to God, I was like, I am never, ever, ever, like, not because I was angry or bitter, but I at that time never wanted to be in another relationship again. I was like, I'm very happy and fulfilled being a parent. I have a program of recovery that I need to focus on. And now it's time for me to know me. Now it's time for me to focus on me and learn me and get to know me and find out what I like, right? Like, what do I actually like to do at night after the kids go to bed? You know,
Yeah.
what does that feel like? Like when I feel comfortable in my own home, what does that feel like? And I wanted to hold on to those feelings and live that. And I was so terrified that if I was to get into another relationship, that those things would be taken away from me.
Right.
Because that's how it had previously been for me, is that not on anybody's, like, it wasn't anybody's fault or anybody's decision to take those away. But when you get into a relationship, you know, in certain ways become codependent on the other person, and you end up doing the things that they like, and, you know, like, you're trying to cohabitate, and when you're doing that, you're not necessarily finding out what makes you tick.
Yeah.
Right? So I swore up and down, I'm like, I am not going to be in another relationship. I never want to be with another man. I loosely considered maybe dating a woman. Like, still trying to figure out who I am, right?
Yeah.
Like, I was like, well, maybe I should just go be gay. Like,
Right.
a woman would be great. A woman would help take
I
care
am a
of the
woman.
kids.
I get women.
Right? I understand. They don't snore necessarily. They might help clean the house. Like, this might be perfect. But anyways, yeah, same sort of thing. I said to God, and I said to my sponsor, and I said to myself, you know, like, if the right thing was to come around, then so be it. But I'm not going to be entertaining this. This isn't for me. It's not something that I want to get involved in. And, you know, like, casual dating, maybe for fun, just for kicks,
get out of the house.
Like, just like, what do you do on the weekend kind of thing. But I didn't want to be in a relationship, and especially not right away. Not right away.
Yeah.
But
drum roll, please.
Dun, 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 God did end up putting another person in my path that I wasn't looking for. And that has advanced previously. So, or since then.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, like shortly after, and I don't know, you were going to tell a story, so I didn't want to like take away your spotlight, but I want to hear more. Shortly after, yeah, there was another person who I knew from in the rooms who knew me and my ex, and I had shared my story one night at one of our rooms. And after the meeting, he approached me and said, hey, how are you doing? Like, are you okay? What's happening? And, you know, I was like, oh man, it's so much, like, these kids, and I'm all alone, and I'm just like so scared, and I'm so torn up, and I don't know if my ex is okay. And I was really hurting at that time, like really, really hurting. It was a year and a bit ago, and I was, you know, really feeling the crunch. And so he was like, hey, well, you know, like, I don't live too far away from you. If you ever need anything, let me know. Like, I'm here to help. And I was like, okay, obviously I didn't reach out because I don't ask for help, because
we never do.
Why would I do that? I don't need help, right? I'm a strong, independent woman.
This.
Yeah. Right?
Yep.
So then ran into the same person again, and sure enough, yeah, if you need anything, let me know. And I was like, okay. And he never reached out. And then, you know, I was sick one time, and he had texted me, and I said, oh man, I'm really sick, and I got the kids. And he showed up at the door with a little gift bag of like tea and honey and things.
Aww.
Like, didn't come in or anything, just left me a little gift bag at the door. And so, you know, I started to let down my guard, and we started, you know, just hanging out, like just friends. He helped me put up my Christmas lights last year and helped do some stuff around the house that I wasn't able to do on my own. And, you know, and that did end up progressing into something more. And, you know, like, I truly believe that it was God that brought this person into my life, right? Like, there was a lot of, I suffered, you know, through the introduction of a new man into my life and into my little family at home. I did go through a lot of feelings of like guilt. Like, I felt guilty because, like, I felt bad that my ex was struggling, and that now, you know, I've met somebody new, and the kids just love him. Like, they just loved him right from the start and wanted to hang out. And I felt like for once I was in a relationship that not to say like my previous relationship felt like this at the beginning, but I was with somebody who I really connected with and clicked with. And this person, I'll mention, has a couple years more sobriety than I do. So, you know, somebody who's been single through their sobriety and has spent 10 to 12 years getting to know who he was and knowing who his program was and learning that connection with a power greater than himself and getting really good at, you know, his program of recovery and really learning who he was. I really was attracted to the fact that this man had the ability to just be him and I could just be me with what I had learned from being single for the time that I was single. And that's really worked for us. Like, it's really worked to like, have a few years under our belt and then get into a relationship. So that's where I look back and go, oh, that's what they mean. Right?
Find yourself.
That's what they mean. Now I get it.
Yeah.
But that being said, I wouldn't change a thing.
Right.
Wouldn't change a thing. I said it. I already said it. I love my ex. I love him for who he is. And I love that he brought me into the program. He brought me into sobriety. He literally was the person who said, get on the back of my motorcycle. We're going to do this.
Yeah.
And he introduced me to his circle of friends who are my friends still today. And they showed me how to have fun in recovery, right? They showed me that I didn't have to be alone. And I went and got a motorcycle license and I started riding my own bike. And I learned all the little secrets and tricks that you need to learn to be comfortable in sobriety. And so we had 2 beautiful children together who I love to death. I love Emma dearly too. I know I said I love Jack dearly, but I love them both more than anything on this planet. Like those experiences that I had created, and we talked about this before the show, it created who I am today, right? And I am today comfortable in my own skin. I'm comfortable being me. I'm comfortable in my family, in my relationship, in my job, in my, the way I represent myself to others. Like, I'm finally comfortable with me. And it's because I went through that journey exactly as it was. I have no guilt. I have no, anger or resentment towards anything that happened. I'm just so grateful that I've had so much life to experience in sobriety. Like, so much rich life to experience, good and bad, all of it.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's just so crazy too, like when we get to a point of utilizing the steps and the spiritual principles all the time, we really get to an understanding, like we're not allowed to be in self-pity anymore. It happens sometimes, right? But we really understand that the bad things happen for a reason too.
That's right. That's right. God's got a plan, right? I'm on a path. I'm on a path that's been designed for me. And you know what? It's far greater than anything I could have ever imagined. Like, hands down, far greater than anything I could ever create for myself.
Right.
Yep. So yeah, it's been quite a journey.
My experience has been a little different. Still really good, right? Yeah. I'm seeing a normie.
Oh, okay. That's great.
But like when I sat down with God, I just said, like, I'm going to keep working on me.
Yeah.
And when it's supposed to happen, you'll put it in front of me. It'll happen organically. Mm-hmm. My whole life has been trying to force and pursue and push together a match for me.
Yeah.
And that's never worked. And I finally surrendered to that idea that when there was a genuine connection, it would come my way when God saw fit, right? And so, interestingly enough, I've learned more about myself over the last year that I have in a really long time, because this person, we have a history.
Okay.
And so I was in a down dip earlier this year, as I love to do every year. Yeah. And every year the advice I always got was, how are your amends coming?
Right.
And I'm like, I put them on the back burner again.
Yeah.
And so after the 3rd or 4th time I was told that, I was like, I really need to get those done. Mm-hmm. Right. And so he was on my list. And so I reached out to him and I made amends, and it went really well. And the most important part for me at that time was the understanding that my motives had to be pure. Right. So it was, I cared about this person very deeply in my past. Right. But that was a very long time ago. So I went in, I did the amends. I was ready to be like, have a great life.
Yeah.
And then he's like, do you want to go have dinner again sometime? And I'm like, yes, I do. And so over the course of, 6 to 8 weeks, we had gotten together, gone out. There was a connection building, something happening. And so what was really cool for me was that as soon as something happened between us, the first thing he said was, we should probably talk expectations. And I've never had somebody like throw that in my face before. I'm like, oh God, healthy communication and like being open. This is weird for me. Right. So we had a conversation and, he was upfront about some things that he wants to see out of his life and he doesn't know what direction that's going right now. And I was kind of, I still don't know what I'm doing. Right. I'm still just doing it every day. Right. So we had kind of sat down and discussed that we'll just hang out and kind of see what happens. And so over the course of the last 6 months, there's just been so much opportunity for me to learn how to cope with fear. In choosing to spend my time with someone who doesn't suffer from the disease of addiction or alcoholism or the only advice that I really have is having somebody match what you want, right? He's super focused on growing. He's super focused on becoming a better human. He's super focused on just being a good person. Right. So that stuff comes really naturally to us. But when I go through moments of fear or where I feel uncertain, all I have to do is say, hey, can we have an open conversation about some things that I have going on? Right. He's super receptive to that.
Great.
And so where I'm at today, and it wasn't easy to get here, took a lot of prayer, a lot of meditation, but he has aspirations to go do some very big things in this life. And I also have aspirations to do great things. Are we going to end up going the same direction? We both have no idea. Right. But what's been really beautiful experience, being able to see this person this past year has taught me so much acceptance. So much acceptance. So I pray constantly. And the biggest things that I go through are, please help me to remember that we're either going to end up together or we're not. Either we will fall madly in love and spend our lives together, or he will be the healthiest relationship I've ever had to date. He will have taught me a lot about myself and about what a healthy relationship looks like. And that will prepare me for what God has waiting for me in the future.
Absolutely.
Right. So it's been really beautiful to be able to live on in the moment basis, right? We don't worry about the future. We don't worry about the past. We lean into joy. We build experiences, make memories. We do all these things. And it was really hard at first to get into that mindset. Because there's always fear, right? Fear, like what's going to happen and what is this going to look like? But what a beautiful experience to help put me in such a healthy position of faith over fear.
Absolutely.
Right? Being able to be like, I know that if I'm doing everything I can every day to do what I think you would have me, you have my back. And if we're supposed to be together, we will be. And if we're not, I'm going to fucking learn a lot.
That's right. And you know what? And God has put this person in your life for a reason. Because you met this person through an amend, which is through working your program. So essentially this person was put in your path of recovery and was there for a purpose. And you're right. Like, what is the purpose? Who knows? But does it matter? Because every day, like I see you, Jen, and oh my gosh, you're doing amazing.
Aww.
You look great. You got the smile. You got the glowy eyes. You got it all, right? Like, you're a miracle of recovery. You really, really are. But it's true. It's true. Like, you've thrown yourself in hard right from the start, and it pays off, and it shows up everywhere. And even the fact, like, that you can sit here and have an honest conversation about not, managing your own expectations and just letting it be, like, that's huge. That's overcoming a lot of fear.
So much fear.
Right, though? Yeah, it really is.
But it also really helped me find myself. Right? Yeah, it's been a ride.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
And, I want to take a second to really, thank you for, you have always been an inspiration to me, right? Coming in and when I came in, I was broken. Right. And I think that something that we should touch on, since it seems to be coming up for me right now, is how much I didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
Because I was court mandated.
Right.
I didn't want to do the
I
thing.
don't even know how you did that. Yeah.
You know, part of it is people like you.
Yeah.
Right? Coming in and listening to these people who genuinely said they enjoyed their lives.
Yeah.
That doing this thing really helped them.
Yeah.
And because of the program that I was in, it was a very long term. Right. So it was like, you're gonna have to do this thing for at least 2.5 years.
Yeah.
So at first I came into it being like, you know, if I have to do this, then why wouldn't I try?
Which is a great approach to have.
That was temporary. Then my ego kicked in, as all addicts and alcoholics love having their egos. Yeah. I was so convinced it wouldn't work. I did it to prove people wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, because I was sure there was no God.
Yeah.
I could not get
right?
past the religious
yeah.
blocks that I had,
right.
and not
the prejudices.
all my prejudices. And so I remember being like, I'm going to do everything you guys tell me. And when it doesn't work, I'm going to be able to say, haha, I told you so. And by that time I should be done this program.
Yeah.
And then I can just go
and
back to my
get
life.
on with my own life.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the strangest thing happened. I'd listened to what people told me. I did everything that they said.
Yeah.
And I got better.
That's right. You did. And it worked.
And it worked.
And you don't even want to go back, I bet
No.
you, and say, I told you so, right?
No, that life was awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I mean when I say that, you know, this gives us a life that we could never even imagine, right? Like, I couldn't even imagine that I would be so secure and so happy and so comfortable in my own life today. And it actually strikes me when you said, you know, when you came into the room and you listened to the message that I delivered, how, you know, you could see somebody who is happy in recovery. And when I think about the timeline of that, based on the story that I just told you,
yeah,
I was going through a lot at that time. When you came into the room, Jen, I was going through a lot of things, and it was really hard. It was really hard. It was the beginning of that downward spiral, and things were completely out of control in my life. But what happened to me is when stuff got hard, I threw myself into my program so hard. Like, I threw myself into a couple of different recovery programs that I needed to be like surrounded by and needed to be in front of my face. And through the hardest challenge of my entire life, my life got better. Like, I grew so much spiritually from going through such a hard time. And I did it in a manner that apparently, like, you've said it now and other people have said it too, like, I made it kind of look easy. Right? Like, I made it kind of look like I was like, I've got my stuff together. And, you know, I acquired, you know, women who I work with now, who I've worked with for years, who look up to that. And the reason, when I asked them, I'm like, why on earth would you ask me to work with you in this program after everything that I've been through and all the stuff that's going on at home and how little time I have to share? And they're like, because you're going through something and you're still doing it. You're staying in the program. You're still sober. You're working your recovery, and all of this shitstorm is happening, but you keep showing up. And they're like, I want what you have, because if my life falls apart like that, I want to be able to do it the same way that you did. And that's what this is all about, right? Mm-hmm. It's about being able to show up and share your message and share your story and talk about the really hard things and talk about the really great things, so that people who come into the rooms or decide that they want to be sober can see through demonstration, attraction rather than promotion, that the sober life actually does work. It's not the end, it's the beginning. It's the beginning of something new, right?
Well, and you know what's interesting is this took me, I think, maybe 6 months to it took me 3 years. About a year ago is when I really figured it out. I always aspired to be like strong women like yourself who were able to throw themselves in it and be open and vulnerable. My defects love to work against me.
Oh, yeah.
And so when I finished my 12 steps, or finished going through them for the first time, some of my most glaring defects are like, I need you to like me. I need
Oh,
you
yeah.
to validate me. I need you to tell me how important I am. I need you to never be disappointed in me. And
Right.
you need to know that I'm killing it all the time.
Yeah.
So I went through a lot of hardship and a lot of down dips when I had holes in my program or life things happened. I felt that it was a duty of mine to constantly show people in the rooms that the program worked.
Right.
So I only ever talked about how to work the steps, and
Right.
I only ever talked about my successes. I never really,
But people can't connect to that.
well, and it's so
Right.
eventually it got so bad that I exploded. I
Yeah.
exploded in a room during a share. I started to cry and I just spilled my guts. And the amount of people that came up to me being like, I had no idea. You always seem like you're so strong. And
Yeah.
I'm like, because I didn't want you to see me like this.
That's right.
And the impact and the honesty from the people that reached out to me after
Yeah.
to be like, that's what this thing is really about. And so now it took me 3 years to even be able to do that. But now I cry constantly. Well, I wouldn't say constantly, right? But now I'm open about
Yeah.
that stuff.
You're
I have
vulnerable.
no problem.
It's the vulnerability,
being
right?
Yes.
The vulnerability opens up the pathway to, allowing people in. We can't do this on our own.
No.
We literally can't. I'm just like you. We're the same. I'm like, I got this. I got this. I'm going to single mom and work a big fancy job and take care of my house and do all the things. I don't need anybody. But eventually we end up like just caving, right? We need to be vulnerable. We need to talk about what's happening inside. And it's not even as simple as like I'm talking about day-to-day tasks, but when we talk about the things that we feel really deep down, like it's so important to have somebody in your life. I have a sponsor who I've worked with for 7 years. I think 7 years now. I've been working with the same sponsor and she knows everything. I have told her things that if I told some people I could end up in jail because that's how I feel deep down inside, right? I have told her things that I would never want to tell anybody. And it's because I've built this relationship with her and I've learned that when I can reveal what my innermost feelings are, they're no longer inside me.
Yep.
Right? They're no longer inside me and they're no longer spinning around. They're now out on the table and they're out on the table with somebody who has proven to me that they will not share, not tell, not judge, not have any sort of bias against me whatsoever. This person has offered themselves to me to literally be somebody to listen to everything and anything. And it takes courage from a sponsor to do that. And it takes vulnerability and a lot of courage and a lot of letting down barriers and fears from somebody to really be able to let out those things that we hold inside, right? But that's been a huge like caveat for growth for me.
Yeah.
Is to learn to share that stuff and to call. Sometimes I think, oh, this isn't bad enough. I've told my sponsors so many things that sometimes I'm like, well, she's not going to want to hear this. This is lame. This is lame. But you know what? To get those things out and have that safe environment is what really propels us into the solution.
Yeah.
Right? Being able to trust and have faith that, it's okay. Like this is okay. And this person can hear it and can share it. And we get it out. And then we're like, whew, glad that's done. Now let's talk about the solution. Now what are we going to do? What's my part in that? What's my defective character? Why am I feeling this way? And what's the root cause?
Root cause.
Right? The root cause. Like this goes back to maybe somebody pissed me off and I feel this way, but it's actually like me projecting something from my past or something that I felt about another person that I haven't dealt with and I haven't shared with another person. So we start talking about, let's talk about it. Let's pray about it. Let's do work around it. Let's do an inventory on it. Let's do the work. We jump into the work.
It was funny. I just went over step 10 with one of my sponsees last night.
Yeah.
And when I used to go through the material, then explain it. And now, because I have enough experience, I explain the material, then I go through the material,
Right.
then I give several examples from my own experience
Good.
going through
Yeah.
that stuff.
That's great.
And so it really helped give her an understanding. But one of the examples that I had that I found so effective and why it's so important to reach. It doesn't matter how recovered you are. It doesn't matter how good you are, how smart you are,
Yep.
how open-minded you are. You're never going to see the root when you're emotionally attached to something.
Right.
You just never will.
For sure.
And so I had this thing come up on Monday. And I immediately turned to one of my biggest pillars. And I'm like, can we do a 10 on this? And he's like, sure. And so me being pretty recovered, think that I'm doing pretty good with my life, was able to analyze. I'm like, well, I think I might be being selfish here. And I think that maybe because of this and that, and I can see why this, but I just, for some reason it still bothered me. But I think that it's this, this, and this. And he just looked straight at me and said, where's the fear, Jen?
Right.
And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, where's the fear, Jen? This is you. It's always fear with you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then he helped me uncover the root that I was terrified about getting an answer for something I didn't have.
Right.
And so this little tiny thing that had nothing to do with the root of my fear, it's just so crazy to me. And I just think it's so important that I remind people, reach out.
Yeah.
Step 10s are so important and they're
Absolutely.
so great. And like, again, with my defects, I didn't do them for like a year and a half because I'm like, I've been given the tools. I should know how to deal with this on my own.
That's right, but that's not true.
Nope.
No, it's
sure
not
isn't.
true. No,
That's the wrong answer.
Everything that they suggest, we need to continue to practice. That's what I've learned, right? As soon as I start to think that I'm good on my own, I know I'm in big trouble.
Yeah.
Big trouble. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like what you said. You were talking about your character defects. I just wanted to throw in there that I've done a few step 4s or a few inventories with the same sponsor. Actually 3, I think, maybe 4 in the 7 years that we've worked together. And one that comes up always on top is, I love the word the way that she phrases it, a constant need for specific validation. A constant need for specific validation. Any validation won't do. I have a need for a specific validation from you, or else my expectation isn't met, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's going away over time. I don't think that I have necessarily a lot of that anymore, but it always crops up in places that I'm not expecting it. At work, for instance, if I send an email and I'm waiting for a response, I want somebody to say, I just spent like 14 hours on a project and I send it and nobody writes back. I'm like, this is garbage. Like, What do you mean? Like, or I get like a thanks instead of like, wow, I can see how much time you put into that. This is really great. And I'm like, yeah, pat myself on the back. Okay, now I can go about my day. But if I don't get that, I'm mad, right? And then it turns into resentment, and then I'm bitter, and then I'm angry, and then it triggers. And it's all a root of fear. It's a fear that somebody's not going to see me for who I see myself as, right? And it goes back to what I was talking about before, like in early recovery, about how like I was empty and hollow and lonely, and I wanted to be the person who I knew I could be. Now, I've figured out how to fill the void through a spiritual connection. It's a spiritual malady. That's what that void is, right? We fill it with a spiritual connection. Okay, I've got that. I'm full spiritually. Like I feel all good and stuff. But like sometimes when I'm not feeling great, I go back into that void of, my fear is that people aren't seeing who I am. They didn't see how much work I put into this. They have no idea where I came from. They have no idea that I actually didn't start my career until I was well into my 30s, because I spent the first 32 years of my life drinking and using drugs. Right?
Yeah.
But there's always a root, and it's always tied to some sort of a fear. It says in some literature that we have 2 emotions. We have fear and we have love. So either we're living in fear or we're living in love. And if I'm not living in love, where's the fear? Just like you said, where's the fear, Jen? Where is it, right?
Where is it? It's
in there. It's in there.
You know, it's so funny that you say that, because that just reminded me of something that happened at work. I didn't make that connection before. So we have like customer feedback, like a customer department that like calls and was like, how was your experience? That's so funny. And so we would get sent emails for all negative feedback, being like, you need to fix this.
Do you get emails for the positive ones?
Well, that's just it. We didn't. Right. And so all my defects and all that stuff, I'm like, I got one thing that went out of my power, and I have 35 that are amazing. No one cares about all the work I did here. They only care about that. That's right. And so I ended up actually reaching out and being like, can we share the positive feedback too? I think that's just as important to talk about that.
Good for you. And you know what? Like, I think that that's important. I think that that's not even being overly sensitive. I think that, as human beings, we tend to focus on the negative, and it's totally true. I found myself actually in a room the other day. I had shown up to see somebody celebrate a large milestone in recovery, and I went into the room, and there was like one person in there who I knew from my, I want to say past life, but it's still my life. Like,
Yeah.
Actually, who was a friend of mine and my ex-husband's when we were together, and we're still in sort of the awkward spot, and I haven't seen that person since then. And they kind of gave me like a sideways look, but didn't smile at me. And the only thing I could think about in a room full of people who I know love me and that I care about and that care about me, all I could think about was that one person, because, you know, he didn't give me the validation that I was looking for. And all of a sudden that overshadowed my entire night. And I was terrified for the end of this meeting because I didn't want to talk to anybody, because after sitting there for an hour, my mind had managed to convince myself that everybody there hated me. Because of one person, because I focused on the negative instead of focusing on the positive.
Right.
And sure enough, after that, everybody stood up, and I had people coming over and hugging me and telling me that they miss me and that they love me. And I started bawling, and I never cry in public. But it was the realization of like how powerful our minds can be when we focus on that stuff, right?
It's crazy.
Yeah, totally.
It's crazy. Which is also another reason why I love following the steps and reaching out to God-centered people, right? Because they help you get to the root of things, but they also help to show you where the positives are.
Yeah, and they help keep it real, right?
Yeah.
Like, our brains are crazy. My brain is crazy. I don't know about your brain, but
It's
my brain
bad.
It's really bad. It's really, really bad. Like, it's deceptive, right?
Yeah.
And it's always that, no, I'm good. I got this. I'm good on my own. And then the crazy thinking starts, and yeah, nobody wants to talk to me. And then I'm isolating in my house, and nobody cares about me because I'm a single mom.
Now you're in self-pity.
And then it's like, well, you know, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen if I take a drink? At least that would make me feel better, right? Like,
that's how fast it happens.
It's the cunning, baffling, powerful side of the disease that teaches us. It teaches us that, like, our ego separates us from other people, and we end up living in isolation so that we feel so bad about ourselves that the best possible situation would be to take a drink. Because aside from that, what am I going to do? Kill myself? Like,
right.
Right?
Yeah.
So, like, getting out in public and being with people and talking with people and not allowing that thinking to take over, for me, is like such an important part of all of this.
Oh, for sure. I heard something in the rooms I thought was just brilliant. Trying to get newer people in the programs to understand the importance of not getting complacent and constantly working and applying these things. And I just love the way he said it. He said, we are all on the exact same path. Mm-hmm. I might be further down the path than you are, but it doesn't matter how far up the path you are. We're all the exact same distance from the ditch.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And our ability to stay well is 100% contingent on our spiritual condition.
Absolutely, it is. Every single day. Every single day.
Every single day. You know what's really cool too is like when I came in, this was something that I had to do, and then it became something that I got to do, and now it's something I just do.
Yeah.
Right. Trying to, and I'm human. I make mistakes, but living by the principles of 12-step groups and utilizing that and using a divine force to assist me when I need extra strength or courage and that kind of thing. Like, oh my God, life is just beautiful today, right?
Yeah.
Life is hard, but the ability to deal with what life throws you.
Yeah. Well, we're so lucky. Like, we're people who have been chosen to share our journey with other people and to live in the solution and to help one another. And I think that we're so fortunate. Like, you come from a bad place, right? I came from a bad place of addiction and alcoholism, and I was very alone in life, and I didn't have any help and supports. And I know people who are totally normal. They don't have problems with alcohol or drugs or anything. They're total normies, no issues, just normal people, but they don't have a program of recovery to help them with life, right?
Yeah.
But we get to come from like the bottom of the bottom. We get like thrown into this solution, catapulted into the fourth dimension of existence. And now we have a life where we have a community of people around us. We have supports all around us. We have places to go and people to call, and you can just you can turn on your computer and, have the solution put right in front of your face whenever you need it. And in these, in my program, I've found I should be careful, but I've got like a plumber, and I've got I got a furnace guy. I got a guy who mows my lawn. That's my boyfriend, but If he listens to this, he'll be like, it's me. But like we have people, we create a community, and a community is what we really need to be successful and to thrive in life. And there's so many people out there that don't have access to a community like we have access to. And you're right. Like I did not want to, like, I went to meetings a few times before I sobered up this time, and I didn't want to be there. And when I decided to sober up this time, I wanted to be there. Like, I wanted to be there, but I didn't want to be there all the time. I didn't particularly enjoy it. It was very hard. Yeah. It was very challenging. And I didn't particularly enjoy the process. And yeah, I felt like I had to go to meetings. I had to do this. I had to have this maintenance program. And now it's not even a get to. It's like, I love it. I freaking love it. I actually wake up and I read readings. I've gotten really big into Emmett Fox. He's like a spiritual guy. Like, it's not related to any program or anything, but like it takes my prejudices against the Bible and turns them into like regular thinking. So he'll take like Bible verses and make it sound like in layman terms, like not religious. It's really cool, right? So I like wake up and I read this stuff because I want to grow spiritually. And I read, my sponsor sends me things on my phone, like morning readings, and I read those and I share them with people and I share them with my boyfriend. And, we talk about it together and we talk about how we can incorporate these things in our lives. And I go to my meeting. I have a meeting. It's my non-negotiable meeting that I go to every Saturday morning. Non-negotiable. Unless I'm dying or out of town, I am there. Yeah. And I'm providing service. I am chairing or I'm helping or whatever it is. It's non-negotiable. I have to set that up for myself so that I can be successful, right? Because if I'm like willy-nilly, I'll go when I feel like it. I'm not going to go, right? But I get to I just have so much joy in, working with other people who are in recovery and sharing the stories and like sitting in a group and like laughing our faces off about the dumb shit that we used to do. Like, I have never laughed so hard in my life as I have talking about like people who have like driven off of the road, shit can drunk and like this and that and like come out of it alive. And that's their story. And I'm like, this is so funny because I did it too, right? Like, we did that stuff too. And we can now laugh and share in it because we've made it to the other side. Not to say that stuff is funny. I don't take it lightly, but I do take the fact that we're sharing in recovery together and that we found the solution and now we don't have to live like that. I find a lot of joy and happiness in that. And it's something that I couldn't do without sharing it with the other people around me. It takes others to do it, right?
Yeah, it's being on the other side and being able to trade war stories.
Yeah.
And know that you're not the only one that did stupid shit all the time. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway.
I think this has been a really good talk.
I think so too.
Thanks for coming.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure, Jen. I love chatting with you.
I love chatting with you too.
Yeah, and I love your podcast, and I'm excited for what it's going to do for our little community. You're a cool chick. You're a cool chick.
I'm only cool because you're next to me right now.
Whatever.
We can be tied for first. How about that?
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Thanks, babe.
Bye.
See you next time. Peace.